All right, let's see. I should be live everywhere. All right, cool. How is everyone doing today? This is Video Tech Tuesdays. I'm Angela from Angela Wolf Video, and we're coming to you live. So this morning I did have a shoot, if anyone saw my Insta stories, but we got back just in time to go live. Last week, of course, we had to shoot all day, so we had to do a pre-recorded one, but this week worked out perfectly for us. So welcome back to the live version of Video Tech Tuesdays. I'm Angela. I'm here on Facebook, YouTube, and then Instagram on my other camera up here. So we're just doing a lot of fun stuff today. And basically what we do every Tuesday is at 1 o'clock, we get online and we talk about video tech specs and gear. And the idea is that we want to talk about all the fun stuff that there is with video marketing, how to make videos, how to use them for your companies, that kind of good stuff. So what are we talking about today? So today we are going to be talking about conferences during COVID. All right. So the fall tends to be conference season, right? And usually we get a big hotel or casino and we rent out their giant ballroom and we shove it full of 200, 300, 400 people and do a big conference for 3, 4, 5 days straight. And that's something that Angela Video films, and we work with companies to record their conferences so that they can give it to people who couldn't come, that they can sell the videos and all that good stuff. But this year is a little bit different when it comes to conferences, isn't it? It's not really feasible to get 200, 300 people together in a room for 5 days in a row. And as the colder months are coming in, it's the end of October. I can't believe it. If you're like us who, I'm in Philly and on the East Coast, it gets cold when you're, in the northern part of the East Coast. You can't be outside and having a group of people together in November. It just gets too cold. It's not feasible. So what do we do, right? And I've had multiple clients come to me and say, you always film our conferences. We can't do the conference this year in person the way we normally do. What should we do instead? And I have been hosting Zoom webinars. And they've been going great. And they're something that's a little bit tricky and a little bit different. But right now, it doesn't make sense to just push off your conference, right? We had that with a couple of, in the spring, people were like, we'll just do it in the fall. And we're still here. So I think what would have been a great idea for today is to talk about a couple different ways you can do live streams, virtual conferences, and webinars, and then to just kind of give you a quick overview of specifically Zoom webinar, which is the one that I like to use and I use with my clients. So as per usual, I always suggest hiring a professional if it's something that's going to be a big project. If this is an outward-facing project, is this something that you're selling tickets to? You're definitely going to want to have a professional on board helping you run it behind the scenes because it can get a little overwhelming. If you're not quite at that stage, if you're not looking at something big, if you're maybe only having 50 people, it's something you want to run yourself. Totally fine. We're going to give you some tips. But first tip is absolutely you need someone who's dedicated to just running the videos and running the actual webinar itself. Make sure, you don't have the panelist who's giving a talk also trying to moderate and also trying to do tech support for anyone who's, trying to log on and can't. So you want to have someone dedicated no matter what to the webinar section of the process. And just double checking if we're going. 1 second, everyone. There we go. All right. Sorry, Instagram. We're a little bit late to the game. My connection dropped out and my live feed on Instagram dropped out. So hello, real quick, Video Tech Tuesdays. We're talking about conferences and how to do a live conference on Zoom or virtually. Now we're all caught up. All right. So first thing is first. There's a couple different ways you can do it. If you are feeling confident in the way in the location, if your conference, is going to be usually located in a central area where all your panelists are, within an hour drive, they're used to coming to the event live. It's not something that's going to require a hotel or a lot of travel for your panelists. You can always still keep the panelists together and film it. And kind of like broadcast it live using like a video crew coming into like an auditorium or a conference area and spacing it out. It's a little bit trickier in a way because you have to worry about, still staying COVID compliant, only having one person on the stage at once or having them, spaced out 6 feet apart. You're still going to need a space to film it in. You're going to definitely need to hire professionals to come in and video it. However, the plus to doing it this way is that you kind of take the burden off of the presenters, right? They don't have to worry about setting up a Zoom account. They don't have to worry about getting their webcam to work, and to make sure that their internet's working. They just have to show up and talk the way they normally would have to do during a typical conference. And so that can be like a burden lifted from your panelists. But again, to do that, you're going to still need a space, and you're definitely going to need a video crew to be there to do the proper video setup so that you can live stream it to whatever site you want to be hosting it to. Now, the other version is to make everyone virtual, right? So instead of just having the attendees virtual, you also have the panelists virtual where they kind of call in through whatever video conferencing you're using. Again, it's really, really good for COVID compliant. You don't absolutely need a video crew the way you would do the other one. However, again, you're putting that burden back onto your panelists where they have to make sure they can use they have to have a webcam. I've had panelists contact me and say, well, I don't even have a webcam. How can I do this? Right? So you're putting that kind of technical burden onto your panelists, which can be a pain, might not be a pain. But then on the upside, again, not only are you extra COVID compliant this way, but then you can have a panelist from London give a talk for something that would have been hosted in Philly, right? Like you're not bound by location anymore. So that's really nice too. So we're going to be talking about today how to do like the webinar 100% virtual because again, the other one, it's really technical. It's really detailed. It's something you're going to need to hire someone for. So let's say we're doing this. We want it 100% virtual. We're going to have the panelists call in. What do we need for that? So first thing is that we need a solid internet connection for all of the panelists and the person hosting the live stream. Okay. So live streaming something in full HD, which is 1920 by 1080, it takes 2.5 gigabytes of data an hour. All right. So before you just like whip out your phone and you're like, oh, no problem, I can live stream, think about your data rates. Or if you have a mobile hotspot, again, sometimes, you got to worry about, that 1 gig it comes with of free data. Like it's not going to cover your live stream, assuming your webinar goes more than, 30 minutes. So that's just something to keep in mind. Another one is you need a fast internet connection. The minimum for uploads are 5 megabits per second, but that's still pretty slow. You need really for if you're live streaming like full HD, we're not even talking about 4K right now, but like full HD, one stream, 10 megabits is what they suggest. And again, this is your upload speed, not your download speed. Typically when you see an advertisement for your local internet provider, they're going to tell you what their download speeds are because they're really, they're twice, sometimes 3 times as fast as the upload speeds. So don't let that fool you. Don't be like, oh, I got 25 megabits download. Well, you might still only have 5 megabits upload. So that's going to slow it down. Another thing that will slow it down is if other people are using your internet. We're all working from home, right? So my husband is on the internet downstairs on his computer doing work right now. So we have to share that bandwidth. So if we only had 10 megabits per second, and now we're splitting it between the two of us, and maybe he has to, download a work document, well, suddenly our internet's going to be like really stretched thin, and it's going to get really poor reception on my side. So, whoever's hosting it, whoever's being the panelist, unfortunately, you're going to have to tell everyone else in the house, like, no watching Netflix, no downloading anything, just the bare minimum for the internet until we're done. Unless you have, a really good high-speed internet connection. And so that's kind of like the techie end of the internet that we need to know for live streams. Now there's different places you can host your webinar. On YouTube is a popular one. You can do it public, unlisted, or private. Public, obviously. Anybody can just Google it and find your webinar. And sometimes that's really great, and that's what you want. And you want as much as many people watching as possible, which is why I live stream to YouTube, and I do it public. So anyone who has a video question can find it and can watch it, right? Unlisted means anybody can still watch it, but they can't just stumble upon it. They need the specific link. And by having the specific link, they can watch it. They don't need a account. They don't need to log in. They can still just watch it, but not anybody can find it, right? And then private is like a specific person you put in their YouTube account, and only the people, the email addresses you've added to that live stream are the ones who can actually watch it. So that's really good if it's something that's like super private, like weddings. People are live streaming weddings, and maybe that's something you only want these 3 people who couldn't come to see it, and you don't want anyone to see it. Then the private's great. The problem with YouTube is there's no way to track exactly who's watching your videos. Now, again, something like what I'm doing, my Video Tech Tuesdays, I'm not worried about who's watching it because I'm just doing it to share my information and talk about videos. But there are a lot of conferences that are being held specifically to give people continuing education credits. And to give them those credits, you need to have a really great way of tracking who's attending, when there's attending, are they paying attention, all of that very important stuff. And YouTube's not going to be the place for that. That's not something you're going to be able to find or really get from YouTube. Another thing about YouTube is you're going to need a streaming software. Not that that's hard. It's just an extra step. And then you're going to need to do something where all the panelists are together. Again, either that live panelist idea that I was talking about, or they're going to have to all kind of call into the central person, and then the central person is going to have to push it out to YouTube, but you're all kind of coming from the one spot. You're all live streaming from one location. So the other one, another hosting site is Facebook, which again, I'm also on Facebook right now. You can do it public on a page like I'm doing right now, or you can do it privately in a private group. So that's another one where if you want to maybe sell tickets and you only want people who bought the tickets to be able to join, then you put them in a private group, and only people in this private group can watch your live stream. Downside is everyone needs to have a Facebook account to watch your Facebook live stream, especially if it's private. And as the world is moving away from Facebook, it might be harder, or you might be alienating some people if that's your only avenue for your conference. The nice thing though about Facebook is you don't need a streaming software. You just really need to plug in your camera and go. So that's convenient. But again, you kind of need everyone together. And again, it's harder to track people. You can, because everyone's logged into Facebook, but it's a bit of a pain in the butt. So the last one is the one that I use and that I would suggest is using Zoom Webinar. Now, there are definitely bigger and better programs that also cost much, much more money. And if it's, if you're trying to do a conference that you typically have like 20 booths, 100 booths of, sponsors that people go to, and then they have, like cocktail hour, and then you have, like 5 days worth of events, like maybe you do need a bigger program, and maybe you definitely need someone hosting that to put that all together. Again, we're not going into that. We're going to Zoom webinars or something that's really good for your like small to medium sized conferences. And they're really great for either you can run it yourself or just getting a company like myself to put it all together and make it run smoothly without like breaking the bank. So the reason I like Zoom webinars is that it is amazing for tracking people. Again, the most of the conferences that I host are for continuing education credits, and this gives you pretty much everything you need. It tracks people who registered, people who attended. It tells you when they logged on and when they logged off. So if someone clicked your link, logged on for 5 minutes, and then left the Zoom meeting, okay, they didn't watch it, they don't get the credit, right? You get performance reports, you get Q&A reports, polls, and a survey. All of these are great. And things that don't necessarily come with your typical Zoom meeting. It's a Zoom webinar feature. So for a much more controlled situation for a conference that has these requirements, it's really, really convenient. Another great thing about Zoom is that it's easy for all your participants to be remote, right? They just join in as a panelist on Zoom the way that they would join like a normal Zoom meeting, and you don't have to worry about trying to patch people in and to switch cameras and to do all this kind of complicated stuff. It's super easy. Zoom also makes it easy. There's like a button as a host to just like live stream directly from Zoom to YouTube. So if you want to also have that option of putting it on YouTube and making that available, you absolutely can. And of course, Zoom always offers the recording, so you can record your whole webinar and put it on Zoom on YouTube afterwards if you want as well. But it's nice that you can live stream directly to YouTube from Zoom. You also don't need any live streaming software, so you don't have to worry about adding on more programs that you might not know how to work or everyone needs to worry about, right? So a couple of things about how the Zoom webinar is different than the Zoom meetings, and this can get a little bit complicated, especially if people aren't super tech savvy who you're bringing on as panelists and attendees, okay? So we're all used to Zoom meetings by now, mostly, right? That's the main kind of source of meetings for the past 6 months. But the reason that I really like the webinar version versus just doing a really giant meeting, number one reason is that attendees cannot turn on their video or their audio, right? Like you're in a Zoom meeting and everyone joins and like everyone's audio's on and there's dogs barking and people are like, have like weird stuff going on and like their cameras are popping up and like it's just a mess. So webinar is really wonderful because it does not allow attendees to even accidentally turn on their stuff. They're automatically all turned off. As a host, you can turn it on for them and allow them to talk. If they have questions, they can raise their hands, they can type out questions. But it's not something they can do themselves, and that just makes it run much more smoothly. You have panelists in a webinar. All right. So you have the host, you have a panelist, you have attendees. Those are like the 3 categories we have. The host is the one who gets all of the fun, techie, controls, right? They're the ones who can unmute people. They can, record it, they can do the screen share, they can adjust who does the screen share, and of course they have control over panelists, so they can turn a panelist into an attendee if they're only speaking for like 30 minutes and then they're done. You can transfer them from being a panelist into an attendee so we don't see their video, it's not distracting. Or you can turn an attendee into a panelist. So someone who, again, maybe they weren't there for the beginning half, but they're going to be there for the second half. You can just like hit a quick button and now suddenly their video's up, their audio's up, we can see and hear them. Another thing that I really like about the webinar over the meetings is that you have a Q&A function. You still absolutely have the chat box. I think things get really messy in the chat box. It's just kind of like this long stream of consciousness to me. So I leave the chat box for like the panelists to talk in if we have like tech questions for each other, right? But I ask all the attendees to use the Q&A, and it pops up separately, and each question gets popped up as like a little bubble within the Q&A box. And then there's a button to click answer the question, and you can either do like answer it live, and so you just like, here's your answer, I'm telling you, you click that button, or you click a button to answer it by typing it out if you don't want to like slow down or bog down the speed of your live stream, or like, you know, just like the flow of the conference really. Either way, you hit that button, and then the question leaves the question area and goes into the answered area. So you know which questions you've already answered. You don't have to scroll through people talking back and forth about like, oh, I can't see the video, or like, oh, hey, Monica, what are you up to today? Right? Like the Q&A is separate. You know exactly what's going on. Each thing is just really well laid out. I absolutely love it. Another thing we have are polls, which are super great to get interaction, to get feedback from people, to just keep everyone like alive, alert, enthusiastic, right? And then another fun thing is a survey. So at the very end, if you want, you can set up a survey to automatically pop up when your conference is done or whenever the webinar is turned off, and then people can answer that. And you have, you know, that survey that's just like a typical thing at a conference, right? You hand out those papers, say, how was the survey? Or how was the conference? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? You can just do this all virtual, and it makes it super easy, and it's automatic. So I wanted to show you how to set up a Zoom webinar. Now I do want to note that Zoom webinar is it's all within the Zoom program. However, it is an add-on price. So if you have a Zoom account, you need to pay extra for a Zoom webinar account. And those have kind of increments. So like if you have up to 100 attendees, that's one amount. The next is if you have up to 500 attendees, that's more money. If you have up to, you know, and so the more attendees you have kind of like in batches, is the more prices it is for the webinar. So it does get a little bit pricey. Again, it's the most affordable kind of webinar software there is. There's other ones that do a lot more things than Zoom does, but they're much more expensive. And a lot of times you just kind of like don't need all those extra features. You're paying for things you're not going to be using. So that's why I kind of stick with Zoom. And it's something that people already know. It's easy for people to log on. You click the link, you ask people to register. It's already familiar to them. So let me switch my camera over. Everyone on my Instagram, you're going to just have to listen to my lovely voice. And other than that, we're going to switch this. If you're on Facebook and YouTube, you're going to actually get to see my screen if I can get it to work. All right. Woohoo! Look at this. So I'm in Zoom. Go to webinars, and I did new webinar. So same idea. You write in your topic, you know, Video Tech Tuesday webinar. Put in your little description, which is so people know what the webinar is for. You can schedule it, of course. Schedule it in advance, obviously, you know, be like, all right, you know, December 4th sounds like a good day to schedule this. Schedule the time, schedule the duration. It's very similar to setting up a Zoom meeting, which is really nice, again, to just make this like whole flow work well. Registration is one of these big ones, again, for compliance reasons. I always like to make them required for the registration so that people can't just log on and then tell you, oh, I logged on, but I forgot to register, and that's why you don't know that I was there. You know, this just kind of like puts another barrier where if someone forgets to register, they can't log on. And so then they email you and go like, oh my God, I didn't register, sorry. And then you can send them the link and all as well. So I always put that on. Password is good too. Again, I mean, sometimes it just depends. It helps keep it more private. Make sure no one like pops in. I always do the audio as both so that people can call in with their telephones too, because sometimes their internet's not working. Sometimes they just can't get through on the computer and their speakers on their computers don't work. So I always do both telephone and computer audio. Now here are our webinar options, which are really fun. Again, always do Q&A because I just think that's so much easier to answer questions that way than in the chat box. Absolutely do a practice session. What a practice session is you go and you start your webinar and the panelists all can join. None of the attendees can join yet. And so everyone who's there, all the panelists and the host can test out your screen share, can test out your microphones, can make sure we can see everyone and hear everyone and everything looks beautiful before you let the attendees in. So absolutely enable your practice session. Make webinar on demand is where you're going to kind of like put it in the cloud. That's not something I really do. Again, it's just like you want it just for the people who are logged on, who are registered. So that's not one I click. Automatically record webinar is something I always do because I never want to forget to hit the record button, right? So I have it automatically record and I always save it locally on my computer. You do have a limited amount of space on the like Zoom cloud to save things, and so to make sure you never run out of space, I always just do it locally, and you can save it in a specific location on your computer so you never lose it. Then you just go like that, and then you hit schedule. So once you schedule it, go back. So once you schedule it, you can, of course, as usual with Zoom, add it to your calendars. Here's the ID. Here's kind of all of your information we just did, and you're welcome to always edit it if you decide, oh, whoops, I did it wrong, right? You want to change something. Then down here, you have your invite your panelists. And this is where you go on, you put their name and their email address, and it will send them a link. And this is a specific individual link just for them to use, so you can't share it. You know, it's like one link per person. So don't just like copy and paste it and like put it in a big, you know, bulk email somewhere. Put each individual person's email in here, and then they will be given a link to join as a panelist up front, and you don't have to worry about trying to turn them into a panelist from attendee. You can see the webinar subscription I have is up to 500 attendees. Here's the registration link. So that's what you're going to send out to all your attendees for them to join at. And what's really nice is that you can also go into this branding session and you can change the name of the webinar registration page. You can add a photo, you can add a logo, and this way you can just start branding everything either with your specific brand or with sponsors. So this is, we use on the registration page, we put a lot of sponsor logos on these for my clients so that the webinars can still be sponsored the way a conference is sponsored, and people can still see their logos, but it's just virtual instead of having like a poster up. And this is also where you do the polls. You add a poll, you add a survey if you want to add a survey. And then of course we can do the adjustments for the Q&A and all that good stuff. And then here's where you can do the live streams for YouTube or Facebook and make those adjustments. So that's basically how the webinar works on Zoom. Again, it takes a little bit of time. There's a lot of little nitty gritty settings we didn't go into to kind of like adjust it. You can require people to sign on to Zoom, or you can not require them to sign on to Zoom. There's just like a lot of fun little details like that. That again is why if you're doing something a little bit bigger, a little bit more complicated, absolutely recommend using hiring a professional. Those are my dogs. Someone's at my door. That's what happens during live streams. And you know what? It's been a half hour. You guys don't want to listen to me anymore anyway. So, all that being said, that is my intro to doing a virtual conference during COVID. Unfortunately, it looks like we're going to have to be doing virtual for the time being, for the foreseeable future. I know no one wants to hear that, and I apologize. But if you have any questions at all, comment on these videos, send me a DM, get in touch with me. I'd be happy to answer your questions, make it for our next video. Or, of course, go to bit.ly/AWV checklist. It's on my screen if you're on YouTube and Facebook. If you're on Instagram, go to my bio. It's in my link tree. The AWV checklist is a free download of the checklist to do branded videos. If you're thinking about you might want to do a branded video, download the checklist. It will give you all of the pre-production stuff you need to help figure out how many videos you need, what's the content going to be, who's going to be involved. And then once you do that, you either start your video project and call it a day, or you say like, oh my God, this is way too many things. I don't know what I'm doing. Then if it's the second thing, you want to go to bit.ly/callawv, again, in my link tree in my bio on Instagram. That is a free video analysis call. You know, schedule a call with me. We'll talk for half an hour. We'll see like what your ideas are. I'll let you know like how feasible it is, what the cost is going to be, all of that good stuff. So schedule a call with me. I'd love to talk and we'll figure out life together, right? So that is everything I have for today. We went a little long. I apologize. But let me know, of course, what you want to know for next week's Video Tech Tuesdays. We'll be live again at 1 o'clock next Tuesday. Have a